Hey everyone, welcome to my first career strategy session solo. Tonight I'm going to talk to you about the fundamentals of networking. So a few weeks ago, I went down to Louisiana, to Southeastern Louisiana University, and I spoke with the Upper Bound students about networking. And there were 4 fundamentals that I wanted them to get out of the session. After the session, some of the adults came up to me and they said, wow, that's something that I forgot about, just the basics of networking. And that was the impetus for tonight's Google Hangout and career strategy session, the fundamentals of networking. So if you have any questions tonight, I'm doing this solo. So submit your questions through the Google Q&A. If you have any questions on Twitter, of course, I'll always answer those. Or you can head over to my website, Jacqueline Twilley, and leave a comment there and I will get back to you. So before we jump in, just want to let you know that the first chapter of my book, Navigating the Career Jungle, A Guide for Young Professional, the first chapter is Savvy Networking. It has lots of great tips that can be implemented right away. But tonight I'm going to go a little step back to the basics and talk about the 4 fundamentals that you need when you're networking. So if you have any questions, I see that my phone is blowing up tonight. You can definitely submit those through the Q&A box here on Google. I will answer all tweets and text messages at a separate time. All right, so the 4 fundamentals. The first one is the greeting. The second one is a firm handshake and great eye contact. The third fundamental is the conversation, and the 4th is the follow-up, which I think is most important, and I'm going to spend the majority of the time tonight talking about step number 4, fundamental number 4, the follow-up. So, the greeting. When you go to a networking event, a lot of people are nervous, they don't know what to do, they don't know how to approach a person. So one of the tips that I like to give people is 1, arrive to an event early. This allows you to already be in the room. So as people come in, they're more likely to introduce themselves to you. And also if you get there early enough, not like an hour ahead, but maybe 10 to 15 minutes before the event starts, you'll have some time to chat with the host of the event. And that gives the host an opportunity to introduce you to other people as other folks come into the room. So that takes just a little pressure off of you from going up to a room full of strangers and just start introducing yourself. So let's say that you do get there right on time and there's already quite a number of people in the room. What do? Well, use the name tag to your advantage. Almost every networking event has a name tag. So greet someone by their name. For instance, hi Jacqueline, how are you? Oh, by the way, my mother's name is Jacqueline. Now don't lie, I'm not saying that, but you can probably find some connection to start a conversation just based off the name tag. If you don't know how to pronounce someone's name, this is also a great opportunity to say, hi, can you pronounce your name for me? And ask them about their name. A lot of people have stories behind their names. Their parents named them after a certain relative, or their name may have a specific meaning. So the first fundamental of networking is the greeting. So the next fundamental is a firm handshake and good eye contact. 9 times out of 10, you'll do this simultaneously with the greeting. So as adults, we are very into our smart devices, our iPhones, our Galaxies, and we tend to rely heavily on our devices. When you're at a networking event, put your phone away. Put it in your pocket, leave it in your car if you have to, or leave it in your purse. When you greet the person by name, extend your hand and give them a firm handshake. One of the tips I learned in college is if you cusp your hand like this, just a little bit like that, you're able to give a firmer handshake, especially if you have small hands like mine. But when you're shaking that person's hand, look them straight in the eye. And look pleasant. You don't want to look grumpy, and you definitely don't want to be standoffish where someone is hesitant to speak with you. So let's recap. Our first fundamental of networking is the greeting. The second one is a firm handshake with good eye contact. And as adults, we especially need to remember these basics. Don't look over to the other side of the room. Don't look at how long the line is to the bar. Look that person directly in the face, engage with them, and let them know that you're interested. So I have a few people sending me messages on Twitter. Just want to remind everyone, if you have any questions, you can submit those through the Q&A box here on Google Hangout. I'll answer all the questions on Twitter at a later time. So the third fundamental of networking is the conversation. And this can be tricky. People get nervous about this, and the first thing that they ask is, so what do you do? Well, everyone asks, what do you do? And especially if you're at a busy event where there's a lot of people and you're going to be meeting a variety of folks throughout the night, you want to stand out. You want people to remember you, and you want to remember other people. So to start the conversation, you can, after the greeting, firm handshake, and great eye contact, say something like, what projects are you working on that you're interested in? Or what upcoming vacations do you have? Make it something that you can remember and that you'll have a connection to. If you're at an alumni event, for instance, you can talk about the latest sports happenings. One thing that I suggest to people when I'm coaching them through their networking is stay away from the topics that we've always been told to stay away from, such as politics and religion, because you don't want to offend anyone. And as you're building a relationship, you want to get to know someone before you go into those deeper conversations. So let's say that you develop a relationship. Later on, it might be appropriate to have those conversations, but not the first time you meet them, unless you're at, and this is the big exception, unless you're at an event specifically focused on maybe religion or politics. Then it's completely fine to talk about it. So when you're having the conversation, you want to be engaged. Again, don't rely on your smart device. Don't tweet. This is a time to be face-to-face. Enjoy the conversation and be present. It's so important to be present. Even though there may be a lot of things going on around you, it might be loud, it might be hot, because there are a lot of people in the room. Stay engaged. Continue to have great contact even after your greeting. So when you wrap up the conversation, you want to make sure that you're spending time getting their contact information so that you can follow up. This is what I think is the most important step of networking. It's the follow-up. I've often told people that the last three job offers that I received, I didn't apply to. And I got those not by going to a networking event during the time that I was looking for a job, but I've always networked throughout my professional career. So when opportunities arise, people know me and they're able to pass along the message that say, Jackie, here's a job offer, or there was one time where I got a job offer just straight off of that. But most of the time people say, here's a job you may be interested in. I'd like to introduce you to this person, or stop by my office, let's talk. I think you might be a great fit for the organization. So how does that happen? It happens through the follow-up. Before you wrap up a conversation, one thing that you'll want to do is exchange contact cards. Or this is a time where you can use your smart device and plug in someone's contact information right away. So after you leave the event, you want to send an email or connect, whatever method is appropriate. Connect within 24 to 48 hours. You want to do this because you don't want the person to forget you, and you don't want them to forget the conversation that you had. It's so out of the blue and random and inappropriate to send someone a message 6 months down the line and say, hey, remember I met you at that networking event in February? I see there's a job on your website and I'm interested to learn more. I want this position. It's like, who are you? I don't remember you. I don't remember this networking event from 6 months ago. So it's super important to follow up 24 to 48 hours after an event. That way you're fresh on that person's brain and your memory is still fresh. So when you send that follow-up email or LinkedIn request, that it can be taken advantage of and you can connect right away. So another thing that I want to share with you with the follow-up, ask the person what's their preferred method of contact. Some people prefer phone calls and some people prefer text. Other people prefer email. You won't know if you don't ask, and it takes literally 2 seconds to say, hey, what's your preferred method of contact? Now, once you send this message, if you're connecting through LinkedIn, do not send a generic, hey, I want to connect with you on LinkedIn. Customize it. Make reference to the event where you met the person at. So, for instance, you might want to say, hey, I met you the other day at the networking event that Jacqueline Twilley hosted, and I want to connect with you. Mention something specific. If you talked about an alumni event, if you went to the same school, if you're from the same hometown, you'll want to reference that. Just make it something that the person can distinguish you from. So remember when I said earlier, you don't want to say, hey, what do you do? You want to say, what are you passionate about? If you found out that they have a special interest, let's say it's biking, you might want to also include a link to a cool biking article or a link to a biking event that's coming up in your local area. So in addition to that, you'll also want to ask them, when can you meet face-to-face? Suggest a coffee, lunch, or happy hour. Whatever's appropriate. You've probably spent 5 to 10 minutes with this person at a networking event. So use your best judgment to see what's the best form of follow-up for that. Once you get to the follow-up, you'll want to find out what they're interested in, and you want to build a mutually beneficial relationship. The follow-up is not the right time to say, I need a job. I hate the current job that I'm in. I'm ready to make a change. Can you help me? People help you when it's a mutually beneficial relationship. So find out about them more. Ask them questions. And I suggest you ask open-ended questions. An open-ended question is simply a question that cannot be answered with a simple yes or no. So let's go back to the conversation piece that I mentioned earlier, our third fundamental of networking. When you go to an event, you're not saying, what do you do? And you're not saying, hey, are you having fun at this event? That's kind of like a yes or no. But an open-ended question is, what exciting projects are you working on? Or what brought you to the event tonight? Those types of questions are open-ended questions. So once you're at the follow-up where you're meeting with this person for coffee, lunch, or at a happy hour, ask them more open-ended questions. Really get to know who they are. So we're going to take it one step further from that. If you haven't already connected with the person via LinkedIn at this point, you'll want to do so. If this person is an artist or designer, before you meet with them, definitely check out their work. Go to their website just so you can have a more engaging conversation. Remember, you're building a mutually beneficial relationship here. So you want to come prepared. People often say, well, I don't want to seem like a stalker, so I'm not going to go to their personal website. But I say, if you really want to have an engaging conversation, you do want to check out their website. Now, if you go back to their Instagram, to the very first photo that they posted 5 years ago, that might be a little creepy and stalkerish, so I'm not saying do that. But I am saying do some basic research. Look over their LinkedIn profile and look to see if there are any commonalities that you have with this person that you can bring up. Anything that can help you strengthen the foundation of your relationship as you build a mutually beneficial relationship. Now, some networking relationships later turn into personal relationships, and some remain strictly professional. You'll use your best judgment on this. Never try to force something. So let's say you reach out to a person 24 to 48 hours after the networking event and a week goes by and you haven't heard from them. Go ahead and send them a message and say, hey, I can understand that you're probably busy. I wanted to know if you had a chance to see my email. Would love to catch up with you. It's completely fine to send a follow-up message a week later. What you don't want to do is start emailing that person every single day. That's annoying and it's aggravating, and they're probably not going to respond to you. And it doesn't make for a good foundation as you build a mutually beneficial relationship. Now, if you don't hear from the person even a week later, maybe touch base with them again, but forwarding the original email that reminds them of how they met you at an event. Hey, life happens. It happens to all of us. We get really busy. We see an email. We want to respond to it, but something happens and we just simply forget. And the flow of emails are steady coming in, so you forget to go back to that one email from a few days ago. So this brings me to another point. When someone emails you, take the time to go ahead and email them back right away. Don't let it get lost in the cracks. So we have a question here. I want to make sure I answer all of your questions. So if you have a question, go ahead and submit it through the Q&A box here on Google+. The question says, do you have any tips for working the room? Moving from one conversation to another, people tend to gather in small circles. That's a great question. And yes, I do have a tip for that. So thanks, Zena. By the way, last week, Zena did an amazing Twitter chat on interviewing skills. So go check out her blog, Her Savvy Career. So to Zena's question about working the room, moving from small circles. One thing that I find is that when people are nervous, especially going to a networking event, they tend to stick with the same group of people throughout. If you arrive at a networking event with a friend, don't stay with them. The most time that you should spend with the person that you came with is actually walking in the room and walking out. That's it. So if you engage with a group of people, a nice way to break off and see someone else, aka working the room, what you want to do is say, hey, this has been a really engaging conversation. Let me get your contact information. We can follow up over coffee or lunch later. I see someone on the other side of the room that I wanted to meet. If that person is one of those clingy, chatty Cathys, say it again. Hey, I would love to continue this conversation. It's really engaging. Let me get your contact. I see someone on the other side of the room that I want to connect with. Most of the time, people will appreciate that, and they'll welcome the opportunity to connect with you later. That allows you to go back to what I think is the most important thing about networking, is the follow-up. So when you go to another group of people, what I tend to do is when I'm leaving a circle of people at a networking event, I'll try to bring someone else in and say, hey, this is such and such. I'd like to introduce you to such and such. That's one way to be a connector at a networking event. But what if you don't know the room full of people that you're in? Go back to the basics. Go use a name tag and say, hi, my name is Jacqueline. I'm at the networking event because of XYZ. What brought you here tonight? Even if it's a group of people, it is a networking event, and it's perfectly fine to just go into a group of people and introduce yourself. Just be mindful of the time as you're building these engaging conversations and you're really getting to know the other people at the event. If the event is only an hour and a half long, you want to spend just enough time with the people so that you can create that foundation so that you can do a follow-up lunch, coffee, or happy hour. But like Zena said, you want to work the room. So be mindful of that as you go throughout. And the most important thing is just be yourself. You don't want to seem fake, you don't want to seem phony, and you never want to be rude. So if there's someone who's absolutely clinging to you, you might want to invite them to join you in another group of people. And once you get to that group of people and you talk for a few minutes, once you get their contact information and you move on to your next part of the room, leave that person there. Say, hey, you might like to continue this conversation. So never get latched to a person or stuck in one room. Zena, did that answer your question? So, like I said earlier, chapter 4 of my book, Navigating the Career Jungle, A Guide for Young Professional, it goes in depth with some activities that you can do when you're networking. But tonight we're covering some of the fundamentals, the basics of networking. And this was an impetus for this event tonight, was just me speaking to high school students a few weeks ago. And it reminded me that we as adults and professionals, we need to remember the basics as we're networking. So we have about 10 minutes left before we wrap up. So if you have any questions, I know I have a few on Twitter and I'll get to those later. Tonight I'm just taking questions through the Google+, so submit your questions through the Q&A forum. So another question that I have that's been asked often is, what do you do when you want to connect with someone after a networking event and they're just not responding? So like I said earlier, one of the things that you'll want to do is just send that follow-up email. If you have a business card with a physical address, drop a note in the mail. People get emails all day long, but people rarely get a traditional letter. So something like this, you can drop in the mail, or if you work in the same office and you met someone, just go ahead and send them in their inter-office mail and invite them to lunch on campus or something like that. You want to make sure that you stand out and you're set apart from the other people at the event. So one other tip that I have to give you all, I think is a secret to networking that many people forget about, but it's definitely going to help you grow, is selecting the right events. So in my book, I talk about setting a networking objective. What do you want to achieve by networking? It's something that many people skip over. It's like, don't just go aimlessly to everything just because you want to get business cards. Networking is totally not about getting business cards. It's about building mutually beneficial relationships. So before you go to an event, find out, what do you want to achieve? Are you looking to stay in your current industry, or are you looking to move to another industry? What city are you looking to network in? All of these things play a factor in setting a networking objective. So before you go to an event, think about what you want to achieve and be strategic in the events that you select. One of the things that you might want to do is look up professional associations in your area to see what events are going on. You can also check out Eventbrite. They have a whole directory of events going on in almost every major city across the world. Another thing that I like is meetup.com, where you can find like-minded individuals, and that gives you an opportunity to network. So if you don't know where to start, you can start with those. And even if an event isn't local, most of the time conferences now have a live stream, and they also have a hashtag associated with that conference. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to follow the hashtag, engage with other people who are using the hashtag. Maybe they're attending virtually like you are, or they could potentially be attending in person. Make sure you follow them on the social channel that you're on and send them a message and say, hey, I'm joining the conference virtually because of XYZ. I'd love to connect later, maybe over a Google Hangout or Skype. Just some type of way that you can gain the information that you want from the networking event, but also remember, you want to build a mutually beneficial relationship. So those are some of my tips for selecting an event and also attending an event online. We have a question here. It says, hi, I like to know how to best reach out to old contacts from your past profession. It's been years, and now you would like for them to know what you're doing and need their assistance. All right, great question, Hermins. So how do you reach out to old contacts? You can send an email. So Hermins, let's say you're embarking on a new endeavor. Maybe you're starting a new business. Craft an email. Make sure you get your wording and your messaging right. Include all of the personal branding elements that you need. And from that, you'll just simply want to send out a blast. Make the title something intriguing and let them know that, hey, you're back. So try something like title, Exciting News from Hermins. And in the body of the message, keep it brief, but make sure it's to your brand and the message is on point. So I'm doing XYZ now. I'm in XYZ city, and I could use your help by spreading the word. Plus, I'd love to connect. If you're in the same city with the folks from a previous industry, suggest a meetup. Get together. Let's say you worked at a company together here in Atlanta or maybe in another city. What you'll do is you can say, hey, all the old employees from AT&T, let's get together for a happy hour. 9 times out of 10, that will draw a large crowd, and you can engage with the folks and tell them what's going on. If you're not in the same city with the majority of people on your email, suggest you connect via a phone call, a quick chat. Maybe you can do a group Google Hangout with a lot of old colleagues in a different city. You can bring everybody together and you can share your great news. Another thing that I do to connect with people after an extended period of time, I'm big on Christmas cards. So I'll send everyone a Christmas card. At least I'm touching base with them once a year. Another thing that you can do is you can send birthday cards. LinkedIn has almost everyone's birthdays on there. So go through your contact list from people that you haven't talked to in a while and make sure you send them a birthday message. Not just the generic LinkedIn message. You already have that contact info. So send them a personal email or reach out to a mutual friend and get their phone number and give them a phone call. A phone call on your birthday goes a long way in the age of Facebook wall posts saying happy birthday. And if you don't have time to connect by a phone call, send them a text. That's also much appreciated. So just be creative. If you remember a wedding anniversary or a child's birthday or something like that, that is also another opportunity for you to touch base. But let's say it's the middle of July, it's not Christmas time, and you want to connect with people, send them a happy 4th of July email. Happy Independence Day, USA to all my friends. Something like that. Just get creative and make sure that you're always being genuine. Make sure you stick to your personal branding methods and give them the link to either a personal website or a Twitter handle. Give them more than one way to connect with you. But if you're sending a mass email, definitely mention that you want to connect one-on-one. Did that answer your question, Hermits? So we have just about 5 minutes left. So if you have any other questions, you can go ahead and give those questions to me. If not, I am always available on Twitter. My handle here is JB Twilley. You see that on the screen. And you can also ask me questions via my website, Jacqueline Twilley. So as we wrap up, I just want to recap what we covered tonight. The 4 fundamentals of networking. It's the greeting, a firm handshake with good contact, a good conversation, not what do you do, but what excites you, what vacations are coming up, what brought you to the networking event tonight. And then the most important is the follow-up. So please remember that the follow-up is the time to build a mutually beneficial relationship. It isn't the time to ask for a job. First, you build a relationship, and then later you can go in for the ask. And it's not always appropriate to ask. Maybe you don't have anything to ask now. Try to be of value to that person so that person can later be of value to you. As I mentioned earlier, people have contacted me later, months down the line, years down the line, and they said, hey, this job is appropriate. So always be yourself. Always be genuine. And if you don't have a networking strategy yet, check out my book. The chapter 1 is Savvy Networking. It has tons of great tips in there. The ebook is on Amazon for $3.99, so definitely check it out. Let me know what you thought of tonight's Google Hangout, because it was the first that I've done solo, and I plan to do many more. So I just want to tell you what I'm up to for the month of April. The month of April, all of my social media platforms will be devoted to Equal Pay Day. In addition to Equal Pay Day, I'm going to be giving lots of negotiation tips. Women on average make 77 cents on a dollar compared to a man. And for a woman to earn what a man earned in 2014, she has to work until April 14th of 2015. That's ridiculous. It's time for us to bridge that gender pay gap. So in Atlanta, if you're in the Atlanta area, join me on April 14th at 6:30 at General Assembly, which is located in Ponce City Market. I'm going to be leading a negotiation workshop. But if you're not in Atlanta, stay tuned to all my social platforms, because I'm going to be sharing with you lots of great negotiation tips. I'll probably jump on and do 2 or 3 Google Hangouts next month on negotiation and equal pay. And in addition to that, stay on the lookout for a podcast that will be coming out soon. So I appreciate you spending time with me tonight. If you have any other questions about networking, feel free to ask me questions. After you read the chapter in my book and you have more questions, go ahead and send those over. I'd be more than happy to answer. Y'all have a good night and continue to navigate the career jungle.